Hello Zyy'nai of planet Earth, my name is Zyy'nai, and in this episode we're going to be talking about social alchemy for the Zyy'nai. Social alchemy is basically the energetic interplay that occurs between two or more mojos. It's actually more complex and profound than that, but today we're just going to be focusing on the basics of social alchemy for right now, which is between yourself and one or more other mojos. When you're reading social alchemy, what you're reading is the alchemic relationships that's occurring between you and the other person or persons. How they're hitting you and your powers, that's how you're reading them. And that's the alchemy. So you're literally reading the qualia soup that occurs between the two of you. All mojos are designed so they can interact positively with productive harmony with any other mojo. However, it's a question of how difficult that is to do both energetically and skill-wise. But you can do this with any group, and that's what you're supposed to do. Find out how to work with all humans. And social alchemy teaches you how to do this. But in order to get to all of them, you need to build up your energetic fluency. And to do that, you should start with mojos that are more native to you and reach out further and further into your social alchemies until you've touched all of them. Your first social alchemy grouping is the design recognition grouping. This means being able to see and recognize your mojo design. That is, all other mojos that have the Zyy'nai, Zyy'nai configuration, and all other people that have that mojo configuration. This means people who are from all kinds of different walks of life, different ethnicities, different everything, different levels of development. Maybe these are also people that you have feelings about, that you don't like for another for some reason or another, or also maybe that you think really highly of and didn't think that you can't possibly be that creature because they're something that you super aspire to, and thought that you were on just two completely different planets, two completely different levels. But what's going to be the most important step into not just knowing yourself but also reaching out to all of your other social alchemy groupings is being able to see and appreciate your mojo design in all of the other rifts, all of the other manifestations that you'll see played out in all other people. Your second grouping is your inspirational partner. Now, we already talked about how as a Zyy'nai, you have Zyy'nai, V, and Zhai. Those are your conscious powers. You also have 4 unconscious powers, Zai, Ni, Bai, and Zhi. So the Zyy'nai is your inspirational partner, what I am. They are the mojo that has the 4 powers that you don't have conscious, and they have them in the correct hierarchical order in order to be the most inspirational to your mojo. Together, the Zyy'nai and the Zyy'nai create the Zyy'nai storyline. The Zyy'nai storyline being all 8 powers in the correct hierarchical ranking for Zyy'nai's productive harmony. Your third social alchemy grouping is your same source partner. Now, your same source partner is the other mojo that has the same source power that you have, but they're going to have a different tandem power. So as a Zyy'nai, you are a Z alpha because you start with Z as your source power. The other Z alpha is the Zyy'nai. Together, you both have Z as your source power, but their Z is different because their Z is being informed by Vi. But together, the Zyy'nai and the Zyi create the all of what it means to be a Z alpha. And your same source partner is going to be very important to understanding yourself, but also what Z means in its completed form. Then your fourth social alchemy grouping is your inverse mojo partner. This is the mojo that has the same 2 momentum powers that you do, although their source and tandem is going to be the inverse of yours. So your inverse partner is the Nai Z. The Zyy'nai and the Nai Z both have Z and Nai in some order or another as their momentum compound. They also have V and Zhai in some order or another as their modulation compound. And so your inverse partner can teach you a lot about yourself because both of you are experiencing life in a very similar way, having both the same momentum powers, the same modulation powers. But having the inverse order changes the aspect of how you approach life and how you do things, but it's in such a way that is so similar that it the two mojos inform on each other in very educational ways. So those four mojos that we just went over, the Zyy'nai, 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 and Nai-Z, they kind of create your core social alchemy grouping. These are the most close to your design, the most native to you. So from here, then we're going to actually start getting into mojos that are starting to get a little more further away now. So let's get into those. Your fifth social alchemy grouping is the Source Song Quartet. Now the Source Song Quartet has to do with mojos that lead with the same channel. In other words, their source power is all on the same channel. So this is going to be the four mojos that have the same source power that's on the same channel. And for you as a Zyy'nai, you have Z as a source power, Z is a logic-based channel, and so the four mojos that you share the social alchemy with are going to be all of the mojos that lead with a logic-based power. So these are the Zez Alpha. The Zez Alpha are the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'nai, and the Zyy'vi. Your sixth social alchemy grouping is going to be the Storyline Quartet. The Storyline Quartet has to do with which two momentum channels you have. The powers that you have in your momentum compound, and then the powers that inspire those, and the mojos that have those as momentum powers. And so as a Zyy'nai, because of the fact that your momentum channels are the logic-based channel and the interpretive channel, then that makes you a cerebral. And all cerebrals are the mojos that have the logic-based and interpretive channel in either order as their momentum channels. So the cerebrals are the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'nai, the Nai-Z, and the Ni-Zai. Your seventh social alchemy grouping is the Change Flow Quartet. The Change Flow Quartet has to do with the amount of affinity and tolerance that certain mojos have for change and progression versus consistency and kind of meticulousness, repetition. So as kind of a shortcut, you can actually tell which wave a certain mojo is a part of based on what rank their interpretive power is in. As a Zyy'nai, you are a second wave mojo. Being a second wave mojo means that you have a strong affinity toward change and progression and a moderate tolerance for consistency and meticulousness. The second wave mojos are the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'nai, and the Zyy'nai. The eighth social alchemy grouping is the Special Club Quartet. Now, this quartet has to do with basically what kind of environments are the most conducive to your mojo, as well as the kind of language of information that is being passed around in that environment. So as a Zyy'nai, you are an objective interpretive mojo. This means what's most conducive for you is going to be objective or kind of outward oriented types of environment, but also objective environments that favor the interpretive language of information. Okay, now we're going to start kind of expanding our bubbles further out, and we're going to start seeing more mojos that are a bit more further away from us, a little further away from our native design. So the ninth social alchemy grouping is the Perception or Eyes Quartet. This quartet has to do with which mojos share your primary perception modality. As a Zyy'nai, you are a Nai mojo. So this means you have the cunning eyes of a Nai mojo. All other Nai mojos, we're going to share those cunning eyes. So the Nai mojos are the Zyy'nai, the Nai-Z, the Nai-Z, and the Zyy'nai. Next is the Discernment or Face Quartet. This quartet has to do with which mojos share the same primary discernment as you do. Since you are a Zyy'nai, then that means your primary discernment is Z. And so that makes you a Z mojo. The Z mojos are the Zyy'nai, the Nai-Z, the Zyy'vi, and the Vi-Z. So we're beginning to actually reach out further to mojos that are a bit less native to you based on your design, but you all have connections, and this connection is that you are all sharing Z. All of the Z mojos are going to have the same kind of characteristic of face because of the fact that they all have Z as a momentum power. And so they're all going to have the momentum anvil cheeks. Then the 11th grouping is the Psyche Priority Quartet. If you remember, we already talked about priorities in the human design episode. So this grouping has to do with the 4 priorities, and they're grouped based on which mojos lead with the same priorities. So what priority their source power is in. As a Zyy'nai, you are a fighter. This is because your source power of Z is in the fighter or pilot priority. And the fighters are the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'ai, and the Zyy'ai. Once again, we're including more mojos that are a bit further away from you, but in order to have a complete understanding of the fighter priority, then you must be able to actually work with all of the mojos that are in there. So you must be able to actually understand, be able to work harmoniously with the Zyy'ai as well. The 12th grouping is the Shades of Consciousness Quartet. This grouping has to do with the mojos that have the same 4 powers that you do consciously, although they may not have those powers in the same order as you do. They will have them in any order they can possibly have that order in. So once again, you have Zyy'nai, V, and Zai. So let's take those 4 powers and order them in the ways that we can order them. So this means that your shades of consciousness must then be, in addition to the Zyy'nai, the Nai Z, the V Zai, and the Zai V. Now this grouping includes mojos that are going to be very different from your native way. And because, for example, with the V Zai and the Zai V, these are the mojos that have your modulation powers as their momentum powers. And so that creates kind of a very different native way, although they're at the same time extremely similar because these are the only mojos that have your 4 conscious powers conscious. And so they're actually, despite being rather different, they're also experiencing reality in an extremely similar way. And as a part of understanding the all of yourself, understanding the connection between the Zyy'nai, the Nai Z, the V Zai, and the Zai V is going to be something that's very important to your development and connecting to the other mojos around you. Also, this is going to be a very important thing to note in mojo reading because their cues are going to be very similar. Not the same, of course, but very similar, especially when we look at the pod power cues, because these are all the mojos that have the same pod powers. And so you're going to be seeing a lot of very similar manifestations. The momentum and modulation is going to be different, and that's what sticks out, but still a noteworthy detail that you're going to find important when you get into mojo reading. Okay, now we're getting into octates. So these are going to be groups of 8 mojos, and for the most part, they're going to be based on the energy field. So which mojos have one energy field or another. So let's start with the most important energy field, adaptive versus directive. As a Zyy'nai, you are a directive mojo. The directive mojos are the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'ai, the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'ai, the Nai Z, the Vi Z, the Nai Ji, the Vi Ji. Then there is the objective versus subjective octate. As a Zyy'nai, you are an objective mojo. The objective mojos are the Zyy'nai, Zyy'ai, Zyy'ai, Zyy'nai, Nizai, Nizai, Vizai, and Vizai. Then there's the perception lead versus discernment lead octate. As a Zyy'nai, you are a discernment lead mojo. The discernment lead mojos are the Zyy'nai, Zyy'ai, Zyy'nai, Zyy'ai, and the Zyy'ni, Zyy'vi, Zyy'ni, and Zyy'vi. Then there's the interpretive versus literal octate. As a Zyy'nai, you are an interpretive mojo. The interpretive mojos are the Zyy'nai, the Zyy'ni, the Nai Z, the Nizai, the Nai Ji, the Nizai, and the Zyy'nai and the Zyy'ni. Then there's the logic-based versus values-based octate. As a Zyy'nai, you are a logic-based mojo. The logic-based mojos are the Zyy'nai, Zyy'ai, Nai Z, Vi Z, Zyy'ni, Zyy'vi, Nizai, and Vizai. Then there's the perception modulation octate. This has to do with the 8 mojos that share the same 2 perception modalities. The same 2 perception powers always come with each other. So for example, Nai always comes with V, regardless if it's V above Nai or Nai above V, and Ni always comes with Vi. And so this octate is based upon which mojos have these 2 perception powers. As a Zyy'nai, then you have Nai and V perception. The Nai and V users are the Zyy'nai, Zyy'nai, Nai-Z, Nai-Ji, the V-Zai, V-Zai, Zai-V, and Zai-V. Then there's the discernment modulation octate, and this actually has the same principle, where you have the discernment powers that always come in these pairs. A mojo always has either Z above Zai or Zai above Z, or they'll have Zai above Ji or Ji above Zai. As a Zyy'nai, you have Z and Zai. So all other mojos that have Z and Zai are the Zyy'nai, the Z-Vi, Nai-Z, Vi-Z, Zai-V, Zai-Ni, Vi-Zai, and Ni-Zai. Then the 20th and final grouping is the human collective. All mojos are a part of the human collective, and all mojos have evolved together as a part of the evolution of the human collective to be the magical, beautiful creatures that they are today. So all mojos are equally valid, equally beautiful, and equally contributing to the productive harmony that can exist in the human collective. Know yourself, grow yourself, and save the world.